or sand. So if I take the 3 and the 2 divided by 3 inches, that comes up with my soil is 66% sand.
Wow.
Now, I think that's going to change as I, get my clay involved. Any questions?
How many are you gonna do?
I don't know. It is kind of fun to see what happens, but I'm just
do a
hoping to
bunch
see.
at once.
Yeah. Oh,
There we go. Leave it for a second. Oh, never mind.
oh, I can take it back.
Yeah, Facebook.
Yeah, it'll be on Facebook. Yeah. Okay. So what are our different kinds of soil that we have? So we have sand. What's another one?
Clay.
Clay. Silt. And tell me what loam is.
Grass, silk, and clay.
That is, you're right. But what's distinct about it? It's all equal parts of those 3. Silt, I was surprised how much silt I had, because that's often around our lakes and stuff like that, bottom area. But so now we have this problem. Okay, I have a lot of sand. What am I going to do with it? So sand drains quickly. It doesn't hold nutrients very well. So we always know that compost and things like that holds water, right? So we're going to go ahead and add peat, seaweed, manure, compost, anything, ground up bark, anything like that. Now, clay is just the opposite of sand. It holds water. So you can actually get things to be too wet. So if you want to see a plant that says, do it in well drained, you don't want to plant it in a basin with a whole bunch of clay, do you? But clay actually is a lot more nutritious than I thought. It does, but it sometimes doesn't release the nutrients to the plant. Clay warms up slowly in the spring, and it's difficult to dig. We know that, don't we? Especially when it's dry. Again, you add the same kind of, elements to it, all the compost, leaves, rotten. The one difference is you do not want to put peat in it, because peat also holds water. So you wouldn't want to put peat in your clay, or you're really going to have, something that holds water. The other thing, this is just an aside, is peat is in a limited resource, right? And so like in England, actually, they can't sell peat anymore because their peat bogs are getting decimated. So it's a one-time thing. Don't add sand to your clay either, unless you have a lot of volume of soil to a little bit of sand. Because what that sand does, it just packs in with the soil, and it can't breathe and it can't release nutrients. And then silt. Silt is my tiny little layer. Like I say, it often is alkaline and neutral. So you really want to mix that all in. But again, if in doubt, add compost or something that adds more organic material to it. Okay, do you know your fertilizers? If you didn't look, would you know them? I get them kind of mixed up sometimes. So the nitrogen is for growth and greening. We know that, right? Phosphorus, which is our second number on your package, is for, I think this is interesting, it's for root growth, the development of flowers. You've got to have flowers that are pollinated to have seeds, right? So it aids in seed formation. And then the potassium. Boy, could our plants use potassium this last August, September, and into October. It improves resistance to disease and drought. So, sometimes you can get different fertilizers that are equal, balanced, they're called 10-10-10, or you can get something that's a 0-6-6. So, that this is another thing to know about what your plants might need at a particular time. And also, if you do your soil test, it'll tell you what's already in your ground. We use organic fertilizers, lots of times instead of the commercial kind. And just remember that they are good, even though they might act slower, they actually condition the soil. So growing annuals. So this little talk has a lot of varied topics. So, we're going to just be kind of like a little flight of ideas here. You may ask questions.
What do you have to tell us about micronutrients?
Not much. But I bet you that lady back there will have a lot to add.
Well, I was just curious about tips and tricks about micronutrients. For instance, years ago I had soil tests done, and I found that my particular soil is very low in boron. And boron is involved in drought tolerance and root health, seed set, I don't forget what all else. So that's just one that I know about, and I wondered if there were any generalizations about. I mean, when you do a soil test, do they test for micronutrients also?
You do.
Okay, so that we would find out that way. Are there generalizations that you could make about Root County soils and micronutrients? And I mean, just for curiosity, not that it would help do anything necessarily.
Generally varies from regions in the county. We usually see calcium issues within a lot of our soil. That's the reason we see a lot of blossom and drought issues in the county. When it comes to vegetable gardens, and we have a lot of myths of how to correct that. But reality, we have to look to more commercial sources of calcium to put in our soil to be able to fix that. And Elaine's actually going to address that one here in a little bit, but boron is actually one we don't think a lot about specifically, but itself. But we do see magnesium issues a decent amount should come back on our soil test. And pretty generalized in Rowan County. Those are the two that stick out.
Okay, so we're going to do about growing annuals. If you want to grow annuals, you can see all the different containers that you might use. So you can just read that first one. Have any of you used any of these containers, or have you picked a container that you're recycling that you have found has been a good container for starting seeds? Yeah, okay.
Actually, I had seen a trick about paper towel rolls, so I've been stashing them since I saw that months ago, and my husband's wondering, why are you saving all these? Because I'm going to make little starter pots for next spring.
And the advantage to that is you can just go ahead and grow it, right? Put it in the ground with the toilet paper roll or the newspaper roll in it. And the larger seeds, you can cut it to different depths. And larger seeds need to develop their roots a little bit more. So, you can have all different sizes of your toilet paper rolls or your paper rolls.
I was going to ask about the newspaper, if anyone has any experience of using that, because you can make the pots different.
Yeah,
Depths and widths and all
exactly. I have not, but the other nice thing I have read about that is that it actually lets your little roots grow outside of the newspaper. So you don't have to take it out. You don't have to move it or anything like that. So a big thing here is, so I had a total disaster trying to grow my own seeds last year until I researched. I guess that's why I thought about this. You need to know your frost dates, right? And you have some packages there. These are old seeds. You can see that I have lots of ideas that I never get to. But look at your seed package and look back how many weeks it takes for your seeds to germinate. So you want to look at this October 17th to April 18th. So that's when you might have frost. Now, nothing is perfect. It's not like on the 17th you're going to have frost and on the 19th you're not. So give yourself like a week or so between those dates. And then a lot of seeds take about 6 to 8 weeks to germinate. Some take longer. So look on your package and see how many days does that take to germinate. And so you just want to go back from April the 18th, back 6 to 8 weeks. And that's the perfect time to start your seeds. Because if you start them too soon, they can get long and leggy. They just don't do as well in this kind of artificial environment, like I did it in the house with a grow light, as it would in being planted. You want to usually use a soilless mix. I use sometimes a black gold soil, something that drains well, holds a little bit of moisture, but not a whole lot of moisture. Don't go out and dig ground from outside in your garden to be a starter medium. That won't work very well. Then on your packages, does anybody have on there whether your seeds need to be in the dark or light? Because sometimes they're different. Some seeds want to germinate in the dark and some want to germinate in the light. So if your package of seed happens to tell you that it should be germinated in the dark, you can put a layer of sand on top, or you can put a layer of vermiculite on top of your seeds. Label your containers. I learned this too. So last year I had all these seeds and I had, trays and I numbered the trays and I wrote it all in a piece of paper, that, row 1 was this and row 2 was this, and I lost the paper. So, be careful about how you label. So then when I planted them out, I thought, I wonder what this is going to be. You don't want to have it too hot or too cold. So your environment for growing seeds should be 68 to 75. And, you never want to leave, if you're using artificial light, you don't want to leave it on all the time. You only want to leave it on for 12 to 14 hours. Okay. When you water, don't use cold water because you're trying to keep the soil temperature even, right? So you want to do just tepid room water. Water from the bottom. When you're growing seeds, no matter how carefully you're going to try to water from the top, you're going to end up moving those seeds, aren't you? And washing them away. So wait until you get the second set of leaves, and then you can start fertilizing with half strength, a third to a half strength fertilizer. Does anybody know what wilt is or dampen off? Have you ever had that? Unfortunately, I had that too. So, like I said, I think I did a lot of things wrong, but I'm going to do better this year. So that's it. When you have your seed and it's green at the top and at the bottom where it hits the soil, it's just all dead and it falls over. So that is dampening off. And so that's often from a fungus. And so we'll talk a little bit about this too, the next one. So I had some disease last year. I don't want to use those pots again without taking care of them, right? Because if I had fungus last year and I had, dampening off, I'll have it again. So here it tells you about how to go ahead and disinfect your pots, okay? The other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to overcrowd your seeds because, they need air. So don't overcrowd them. And so if your seeds do clump together and they're all growing thick, it's kind of tricky getting, the extra plants out. And plus I always felt like I was killing a plant. That was always hard on me, but you really aren't killing the plant. You need to do that. And I liked a little tip that I heard. Instead of trying to pull the little, plants away from the one that you want to keep, just clip it off. Clip the other ones off, and they won't grow. And you still have your one plant that you want to grow and flourish. Okay, I gave you these seeds because they're all old, but we don't know. Some of them might live. So this is how you can tell whether your seeds are viable. So take 10 seeds out of your pot, and you don't have to do this. I just wanted you to look at the back of it. And you take 10 seeds and you put them on a damp paper towel. Then you put them in a bag and you date the bag and you put it on top of your refrigerator or somewhere where it's warm. Might be, on a windowsill. And then instead, look on again your seed package. When are they supposed to germinate? And you check them out. So if you have, and you multiply for a percentage, right? If you have 7 to 9, those are pretty good seeds. You can go ahead and use that package, even though it said it's going to expire last year. They're good. But if you get to 50 or 70, you probably don't want to bother with them, especially if they're 50%. So out of the 10, if you only have 5 good seeds, throw those seeds away. If you have 7 to 9 seeds, it's probably okay to plant. And you might save $1.89. So larger seeds, like your beans and things like that, you just put them in water and just see whether they sink or they float. If they sink, they're good. If they float, they don't have enough good stuff in them, so they're not good. Questions? Or maybe we should wait. I don't know how long. Okay. I decided that I'd like to do a little trivia just to keep your interest. So, does anybody know why a bird falls off? It doesn't fall off of the branch.
I think because when it clamps onto the branch, I may be wrong.
It clamps.
Clamps,
But what about it sleeping? Let's.
it stays like that.
Yeah. Okay.
They're relaxed. Their relaxed position is clamp.
Clamp. Okay.
They actually, to let go is when they flex the muscle.
Yeah, that probably could be. Well, what I was amazed by that birds, when they are on the bark, they're on a branch, they're even flying, they may fall asleep because they don't call anybody a bird brain, because their brain is capable of staying awake on one side and sleeping on the other.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why they can do that. The other thing is they can take their brain and their REM sleep and they can designate it to a certain area of their brain so that they're not sleeping in all the areas either of their brain. And the other thing is in between their legs, they have a balance sensing organ. And so they think that too helps them stay on the branch, on the bark, or whatever, and not fall off. So that's a little trivia. So
Bees fall asleep on flowers and stuff.
yeah, but
They just stay there.
in the cold, yeah, but they're sitting a
Are they
little
like-
bit. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what bees have. Yeah, I only know the birds. That came out of the Smithsonian, so I think it's true. Okay, the ins and outs of mulching. I think a lot of us know these, the benefits. You can just read over, erosion, conserve moisture. It's interesting about maintaining even temperatures. So I guess, if you think you're on that shoulder season, the mulch will help preserve, maybe keep your roots from freezing, things like that. Suppresses weeds. Oh my, yes, definitely. I mean, you really can use it for that. Protects it from trimmers, mowers. Have you ever picked tomatoes or picked beans and they're all full of dirt, so that's a benefit too. And I thought this was interesting. This is one I hadn't thought about. So if you've got some plants, especially perennials, during freezing and thawing, how the roots will kind of buckle up or rise up. If you have the weight of the mulch on it, that'll keep that from happening too. So there's lots of benefits to mulching.
One of the new trends that I know, at least in flower beds, is the rubber mulch.
Yeah, they don't really love that. You know, probably what it puts in the soil, and even our colored mulches, that dye cannot be as good as you think it would be. So, you know, our mulch ends up helping our soil, doesn't it? And rubber mulch, I mean, I'm not saying don't use it, but I'm saying it's probably not maybe your best choice when you mulch. So here's one. If you use chips, you know, a guy cut down a tree, he's got a lot of wood chips. Why do you not want to put newly chipped?
It'll take away the nitrogen.
Hey, good for you. Yeah. You know, it thinks it's living. So as it lays in the soil, it's going to suck up the nitrogen from the soil. So you don't want to put that close to your plants. Again, shredded leaves are great, because shredded leaves, when you just mow over them and then put them in your flower beds, because leaf mold is incredibly good for your plants. And so they're going to break down, they're going to make a little bit of mold, but make sure they don't have a bunch of herbicides on them, and pine needles. This third section about oak and beech, I thought that was kind of interesting, that they're acidic type trees. Now, how much they really change the soil is probably not a lot, but it is something to think about.
What about grass clippings?
I think they can compost. Okay. I would want them to be hot if they have weeds in it. You know, what do you think, Jessica?
Depends on the type of grass, is my first question. Two, it would depend on the stage you're cutting it, if it has seed heads on it or not. If it has seed heads, want to compost. And home composting, research says it rarely gets hot enough consistently to kill off all of the seeds.
So you're gonna have weeds.
So you're gonna introduce more
Yeah.
grass into your beds, and you're going to potentially help yourself.
You know, a compost to really compost, like she says, I think has to be 120 to 130 degrees, you know, to begin to kill the thing.
To get rid of those weed seeds.
Yeah, get rid of those weed seeds.
Grass clippings is really problematic. To truly compost, to be able to put into those beds and utilize them the way we want. Now, they are good to compost and put back in our lawns, to put back in there and have, nutrients back in our lawns. I recommend that, but to put it into an ornamental bed or a vegetable bed, you're really shooting yourself in the foot for what you're wanting to accomplish.
You know, here's about the black plastic, it gets too hot basically in this part of the world. So have you all seen people who do volcanoes of mulch around their trees? Does that not drive you crazy? A little bit, yeah. So don't, and this figure is really anywhere from 3 to 8 inches. Some of them say, to keep it back from your trees, because all you're doing is making a nice little home for all those pests. You're keeping it too moist. So no volcanoes. Do not apply mulch over your little seeds. They're not going to get enough light to germinate. For vegetable gardening, don't apply the mulch too early. It'll keep your soil from warming up. And you can read that. Limestone changes the pH. And wood chips. If you do use fresh wood chips, keep them away from the house. Our neighbors had to get termite treatments from putting it too close to their house.
How long do you need to season your wood chips to use them as well?
You want them to go through a full compost cycle. So you want them to completely heat up and cool off. So that depends on temperature. All other matters completely go through a hot pile cycle. So you want them to heat them up. They heat up naturally.
Yeah.
So once you pile them all together, you want to monitor it to go to 120 degrees, stay there, and come back down. So you just need to monitor it, wanting it to go through a compost cycle before you use them. And you're wanting them to break down a little bit too. Because if you put fresh wood chips out, they're gonna use up more nitrogen and more resources than that while they're breaking down, than they're going to ever give benefit back to it. If you put them out fresh, which is what he likes to call it.
Yeah, and you can use them for paths, things like that. You know, you just,
As they're breaking down.
yeah, right. Okay, I thought this was kind of interesting. So these are the types of trees that have shallow roots, okay? I have a river birch, and I want to expand my beds to get rid of some of my yard, but it's really hard to plant under a river birch because the roots are up high. The beech trees that way, the Norway maple, some other maples are very shallow rooted, and spruce trees. But if you do want to plant under a tree, you don't want to go in there and destroy the roots of the tree. So one thing that they suggest is just taking a pot, and sometimes you can put a pot in a pot, and just digging out a small area and putting your pots in there. And then when you want to you can even do that for any location. If you want an annual or something to be planted, put a pot in first, and then put your annual pot in that pot, and all you have to do is go around and pick them up. So a pot in a pot, and don't destroy your roots by, trying to dig too much to make a whole bed. I thought this was cute. You ever think in a cold frame? You could do this for anything. She slips an old mattress cover over her cold frame to protect her plants. Double duty for an old trash can. This could be a plastic can as well. You bury the can about 4 inches in the dirt. You put half of the can with dirt, and then, with compost. Then you plant in it with the dirt, and you got a nice little pot there, to plant. Remember, if you plant tomatoes in these big containers, you want to plant tomatoes really, really low, right? Deep planting, because everywhere where there's a leaf, that will root out and give you a much stronger plant. So you can hide those first few leaves when you do tomatoes. Okay, here's another little trivia, and I think we talked about this. Eggshells prevent blossom end rot and deter slugs. So we know now that that's not true, right? So blossom rot is usually a calcium deficiency, and it is usually because you're overwatering. Tomatoes really like it to be very steady if possible, and we can't always control the rain, but on our own, if we are getting in rot, maybe we're just watering too much. I thought this was interesting. If you break them all up into small fragments, it takes a year for them to decay. So I think your crop is going to be done by then, and you're going to have to start all over anyhow. And then it takes several years for them if you just throw them into the compost. Another thing here, eggshells have salt in them. I never knew that. And that can hurt plants even at a low level. And I think Jessica had mentioned once about Epsom salts. There's lots of stuff out on the web to use Epsom salt for various things. You don't want to do that because that is salt, and that will again impact your soil. And one thing that I did reading on the internet one time is we cut some trees, undesirable trees down, and we wanted the stumps to die. So we put salt in, drilled holes and put salt in. Another bad idea. So this is a good point to bring up, is that how do you get really good information as a gardener? Isn't it frustrating? Yeah, no, ask her. Ask her.
Quality information sources.
Yeah. So how do you do this? I'm gonna get to tell it because she told me. So you put your question in. You might want to write this down because I couldn't remember it the first time. You put your question in, you put site, SITE, colon, right, Jessica? And then you put down either EDU or ORG. Okay, you got it?
Or GOV.
Yeah, GOV. Yes, yes.
If you want to trust those.
So she's gonna put that down.
Unfortunately.
So it's site, colon, and then the organization, the education. So, I mean, it's so nice to know you're getting the right information. I mean, when I look for different things on this, I mean, you can get information, you can get it, you know, it's nice because you can get it from Minneapolis, or you can get it from Mississippi, or you can get it from Tennessee, you know, get it from your area, but it's really good. The other thing is slugs don't really mind walking over eggshells.
Now that, I'm surprised at, because I thought that was true.
Yeah. That's
To put around your hostas.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's a whole nother talk, isn't it? About how to get rid of. Anyway, we're gonna get a little to that. Okay, here's a little trivia. Does anybody have maidenhair grass? Okay, I've got maidenhair grass, and up with the church that I work in, they have a lot of maidenhair grass. You know, it's not a native, so what might we use instead of maidenhair grass? Anybody got any thoughts? It might be, there's not really a right answer. I have a suggestion for you. Okay, so here's my suggestion, switchgrass. Native. It grows 3 to 5 feet. Look at these beautiful colors behind here. You can see it's green, it gets a little purplish, and look at that beautiful fall color, and then it puts out seeds. So switchgrass. And one of the 2 kinds that they recommend is Northwind and Hans Herm. I guess that's how you say it. So, little trivia. Using coffee grounds. How many coffee drinkers do we have here? Yes, so we get a lot of coffee grounds, you know, so there's good ways to use them and not so good ways to use them. So let's look at coffee grounds. So in a compost, you wouldn't think this. They're brown, right? They're black, but they're really considered green. Okay, and you want to. This kind of varies, but basically when you do compost, you want to have about 3, maybe 4 parts brown to 1 part green. Okay, 3 parts brown to 1 part green. So you would consider this, if you just have a little compost pile, that's where that, but it was just kind of trivia. So tear up your filters and then put a layer of straw. Jessica was saying too, and I have lots of hydrangeas, you can put a thin layer of coffee grounds under your hydrangeas, but a thick layer of coffee grounds will block water. So just a thin layer of coffee grounds, and it kind of can change your color. And I'm going to go back to the whole idea about soil. I have hydrangeas. They're all blue except 1 pink one that I never do anything. And that's just because the soil's different there, isn't it? You know, whatever, more limestone, whatever. So, for vegetable gardens, you only want to use composted grounds because it's the same thing. If you put a lot of nitrogen rich, it'll pull it out instead of doing what it wants. Tomatoes and peppers, not really helped that much by coffee grounds. So it's just best to use manure or a compost that's, fertilizer that's specifically for that. Don't use coffee grounds by your seedlings. They won't do well. And weeds may be deterred by coffee grounds. Not so sure, but some. But it won't do pests. If you've got pests on your plants, coffee grounds are not going to make a difference. There must be some idea that can help. Okay, so we work in the garden. This is something I could definitely do better. Keeping all those tools. If you can find your tools, that's a start. And then, I kind of find tools a little bit later. Oh, there's that tool that I've been looking for. But anyhow, when you want to, especially at the end of the season, you want to clean them up. Remove the dirt, remove the debris. If you got a lot of rust, you can sandpaper it. Just take care of it. But I think the real tip is, like, I travel to the church gardens and then to my garden, going back and forth to different gardens, even different areas in your garden where you might have disease. Clean those tools in between use, because you can really, make havoc in your garden when you carry disease on your tools. And so, you can just kind of dip them in a solution. If you want to carry a container, you could wipe it off with a wipe, but you do really want to keep your tools clean. And I like this little idea. You take like a 5-gallon bucket and you get construction sand, not play sand, and you put like a cup of oil on it, all the way around. Try to spread that 1 cup down, and then you put some more, and then you put some more oil on it. Oh, you kind of stir it up in between at mid-level, and then you can put all your tools in there. And when you move them up and down, that's going to clean them. That's also going to kind of use like sandpaper, and it's going to lubricate them for the winter. It's going to put a nice oil coat on them. And like it said, they used to always use motor oil, which kind of sounds gross to me. But, most people suggested mineral oil, but you can use any of those oils, really. After you cooked your chicken, you could have maybe used all that. Okay. Let's talk about water. I have to get a little bit of notes here because I want to read. So these are the things you need to think about when you think about watering. Obviously, even the trees we talked about, some of those trees are shallow rooted, or all your plants, your annuals, are shallow rooted. They don't have a big root ball or anything. Your perennials might be either way. So root depth, soil texture. Is it sand that drains very quickly, or is it clay that'll hold a little bit longer? Sun exposure. Is it under, a roof? Is it in the sun all day? Drying out, toasting along the road, maybe. I have a bit of a flower bed right along the road, and that heat from that road just dries out those plants so much. You have to just think about them. This is a word I really hadn't heard before, and it's something to think about. Have hydrozones, where all the plants in that area need the same amount of water. I think that's just kind of good. Always something we can improve on as gardeners, isn't it? Handling drought. So you can, I think that at the park we use a moisture gauge. You can buy them, you stick them in the ground, and it is amazing how it'll tell you how dry it is and whether you need to water or not. The other, if you don't want to buy that, you can stick down an old bamboo little stake, and if it's dry, it's all going to fall off, but it's wet. So see how deep down that moisture is in the soil. A large plant should be moist to 12 inches down, but begin to water it at 6 inches. If it's dry at 6 inches, you should, start watering. Shallow rooted plants should be watered if it's dry down 4 inches, and make sure it goes to the depth of 8 inches. And so how do you know how much water you put out? And the little tuna fish cans can be something you can set around those plants if you're using a sprinkler, and the water will go in there, and you can say, oh yeah, I've got 1 inch now in my tuna can, so I guess I've watered enough. What needs watered? All plants need watered in the first 3 to 6 weeks for sure. And water daily for the first 1 to 2 weeks by allowing the hose to trickle for 30 to 60 minutes. Then after that time, you can water every 2 to 3. And remember, the more shallow rooted the plant, the sooner you need to water. And obviously containers and raised bed. We all know that, man. They dry out quickly. Conserving water. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see it better than I can. So we're going to mulch at 3 to 4 inches. We don't want more mulch on than that, but 3 to 4 inches is good. Get rid of your weeds. Your weeds use up a lot of your water, don't they? So get rid of your weeds before you think about watering. Rich soil always holds. Loamy soil holds more water. Remember that clay soils cannot absorb water as quickly, so you might need to water them longer, if you have clay soils. The next thing is if you just decide to put a hose out by a plant at the base of a plant, and you don't have a nozzle on it, you decide you're going to quick go and turn the water off or on, you can put a lot of water out. So they're saying don't, drown your plant either. I think some of this is the biggest thing that you need to look at. It is better to water infrequently, but for a longer time. You see people with sprinklers, they're putting them out every day for 10 minutes. That's only going to encourage your plant to have shallow roots. You want to water it infrequently for a longer time. The other thing is when is the best time to water? 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Don't water in the middle of the day, when it's, your sprinkler's going around and a lot of it's going to evaporate and all that. But you want to water in the morning, because then if anything gets wet, it has time to dry off so you don't get the fungus, the mildew problems, things like that. And you want to make your sprinkler, this impulse sprinkler is the one that goes and stops. That's probably better than just an oscillating one, because you don't have so much cooling. It absorbs in between the time that it hits the plant. So just some thoughts about watering. I did want to read some. This was too much to put on a slide. So drought defense plants. I'm gonna have to get my glasses for this. Oh, gee. So here's some annuals that do well in drought. Celosteus, cornflowers, cosmos, the global airman. Yeah, thank you. Straw flowers and sunflowers. Ground covers that do well in drought are creeping juniper, creeping phlox, liriope, mango grass, and winter creeper. I pulled out all of the ones that aren't, I tried to stick with mostly natives or ones that aren't invasive. For perennials, you've got the black-eyed Susans, the Baltonia, the butterfly weed, the coreopsis, daylilies, Gaillardia, guava, goldenrod, purple coneflower, and verbena. Shrubs, your native berry, the beautyberry, butterfly bush, flowering quince, forsythia, juniper, and trees. There's lots of good trees for drought that we can use. Chase trees, crab apples, fringe trees, golden rain trees, holly, litten, oak trees, red buds, sourwoods, southern magnolias, sweet gums, and tulip poplars. We had a fringe tree in our native garden area, and it got flooded, and it did not do well, did it? It doesn't like a lot of water. So this is our last topic, is permaculture. We've had some people that have wanted to have an in-service on this. So this is just a little bit of the tip of the iceberg on on this. So you see at the bottom, the very last one, that this is 12 principles of caring for the earth, caring for the people, and not taking more than your fair share. That's permaculture. Some places, even here, it's talking about permanent agriculture. And Jessica and I were talking, and she had a good point. Nothing is permanent in the world, is it? And nothing is permanent in science. So what we wouldn't want it to be permanent agriculture. We want it to change with as we learn. So that's why the permanent agriculture is not the best word, because we're going to care for all those things, but how we care for those things might change as we learn. So we have a couple of, this article here has some ideas. So when you plant, you want to plant for something that is more than just pretty. You want to plant for something that has, at least in this permaculture, at least 2 reasons for existence. So the first one is chamomile. So it takes up potassium. I didn't know that. It makes a great ground cover. It makes a great tea. It can be used for lots of different things. The daylily is beautiful, but it's also edible. The false indigo, it is a nitrogen fixer in your land. It's beautiful too. So, pick things that do 2 different things. Yarrow is a really good one because it releases potassium and phosphorus. You can make, when you put it in your compost, and it's also a first aid plant, and it's beautiful. So that's one of the ways that you can use permaculture. The other one is to collect water in your rain barrel. Instead of letting it run off into, no man's land. Plant for pest protection. This is a good one. If you want to keep pests out, nasturtium, petunia, and sunflower. That is, it traps them. And then the repel. I want to read you what repelling does. So catnip. Do you know what catnip is? It's a great, oh my, the pollinators love it. But listen to all the things that it repels. It repels aphids, cabbage loppers, Colorado potato beetles, flea beetles, Japanese beetles, and squash bugs. So that's an amazing plant, isn't it? And garden mums, I didn't know about those. They repel Japanese beetles, nematodes, and spider mites. So that's just a little bit of a taste about what we can learn with permaculture. So I do hope we get an in-service in permaculture sometime because it's amazing. So it was made, if you want to look it up, by this gentleman here on the slide, David Holmgren. And here are some of the things that it has. It's land and nature stewardship, building, tools and technology, education and culture, health and spiritual well-being, finance and economics, and land, tenure, and community governance. And it has a lot of things, but I don't have time. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. I hope you learned a little something today. I have a couple of resources. And I used to get magazines and I never knew what to do with them, but I would recommend this magazine, Gardener's Gate, for anybody who loves to garden. It's, sometimes you get a magazine and you just hope there's a section about gardens. This is all a section about gardens. So I would recommend that magazine. This is Judy Lowe's, Gardening in Tennessee and Kentucky. And this is Better Homes and Gardens, 1001 Ideas for Gardening. So thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Oh, fill out your evaluations. That way You can learn what you like and you can learn to do better.
Everybody get an evaluation form?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right, everybody get a
You
number.
have failed as an auditor.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I think that's important to know.
Yeah. Oh, many times, many times.
We're all still learning.
Yes.
And is everybody,
Oh, well, don't leave. We have the drawing.
does everybody have a number for the draw?
Because look, Bobby has made this beautiful, Christmas decoration. She is giving that away. And now Chris Lackey has won how many in a row? So we'll see who won.
All right, everybody have a number?
I don't.
Well, that was.
You need a number then. They need a number then.
There you go. All right, everybody have a number now?
Oh, yeah. So who's pulling?
It is number 16. Anybody?
Chris.
Nope. Number 15. Right here.
Go.
Person, right? Number 15. Who's it here? Oh, right here. There's you. You won.
You won.
You won.
Yay. Thank you, Bobby, for making this for us. Beautiful. Cool.
Thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Miss Elaine, for presenting.
That was fun. Yeah, it made me have a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah, it's like, it's okay. I should have let him.
I didn't know.
All right, who has numbers? Check your numbers one more time.
Yeah. You don't need a very wide, you know. You put them.
Who has number 9?
And to end this.
Anybody? Erica.
It's the mental tax, my thing. I step over. I'm gonna try something. See if that works.
You know, one of the things also, I like fish fries. So that helps to raise up. Just shut down.
Stay right in.
Breaks it down.
So you know what I'm doing them now?
Yeah.
Both one of the other by- Right. I mean, that's what I like that.
Oh, now, this is the power button. Oh, the power button right there. Thank you.